Which for me, growing up, I grew up in a very hot and dry area, which means that there are lizards and snakes everywhere. But I love lizards, right? So where I grew up, we had these one lizards called bluebellies. I think there's a picture. Yeah. Will you go to the next picture? The next one, I think, is, yeah, look at that belly. Isn't that cool? So they're really fast, and sometimes the only thing that you could do was catch them by their tail, but then it would just be their tail and the rest of the lizard is gone. But they can survive without them, I promise, and they do grow back. Right, so bluebellies, and then the next one, there's these dragons called bearded dragons, or lizards called bearded dragons, right? So did you know that there's this meme that's like scrolling through Facebook at night, that's a bearded dragon. They're actually really venomous. Yeah, but they're handled by people so often that they're really tame, and so they make really good pets. We have lizards that are called iguanas. Iguanas are chill. Yeah, look at this guy just chilling, right? So chill. And then there's chameleons, and chameleons I think are like my second favorite, maybe my favorite. Here's some really cool facts about chameleons. Would you like to know about chameleons? Yes? We like lizards, awesome. So the really cool thing about chameleons is that they eat bugs. Do you guys like bugs? I don't. I hate bugs. Eat them all. Eat them all. The other really cool thing about chameleons is their eyes move separately, so they have 360-degree view. And I think I have a friend named Tristan who makes a silly face that looks kind of like this. I had permission to say that. And then they have like these really, really fast, like long tongues where they can like grab bugs like mid-air while they're flying, like they're quick, right? And then they have these sticky feet. Raise your hand if you've seen Tangled. Do you guys know who Pascal is, right? He's got these feet, like 1 foot, like looks like this. And like they can hold on to like branches and trees, and like it's super sticky. It's got something on it that makes it sticky. Chameleons are actually really known for their camouflage. Did you know that their camouflage actually isn't, like their ability to change colors isn't based on like our rainbow effect, but it's actually based on their environment. So if they're from a rocky area, they'll look like rocks. If they're from a forest area, they'll look like leaves. And if they're from a rainforest, they'll probably have a little bit more color to them. In this picture, can you see the chameleon in there? I can't see it. It's there though. But they don't just change colors to fit in with their environment. Sometimes, if you guys know Pascal, they will turn into this bright purple or bright red color. And do you know why that is? It is to alert danger, right? So we were talking about camouflage. Do you guys know that humans can camouflage too? And I'm not talking about the military. I'm talking about this thing called a chameleon effect. The chameleon effect refers to the non-conscious mimicry of the postures, mannerisms, facial expressions, and other behaviors of one's interaction partners, such that one's behavior passively and unintentionally changes to match that of one another's in their current social environment. The person who did this study continues to go on and says, which serves to foster relationships with others. So basically, it's a lot of science talk that talks about we see a behavior that we like, we adopt it as our own, and yeah, that's the end of the story. That's basically how you make up these mannerisms. But sometimes that gets us into trouble, doesn't it? Sometimes when we're around friends and the social pressure gets to us, this chameleon effect can kind of work against us. So raise your hand and keep it raised if you've seen the movie Mean Girls. Keep it raised. Raise your hand and keep it raised if you've ever watched a sports game, been on a sports team, or heard of a sports team. Raise your hand and keep it raised if you have ever been a part of, seen, or watched and stood by, or been bullied before. Raise your hand if you wear trendy clothing such as Nike, Aeropostale, Adidas, Rue 21. Keep it raised. Raise your hand and keep it raised if you've heard of or said trendy words like yeet, YOLO, or LOL. Keep them raised. And then raise your hand if you listen to music around you just because your friends listen to it. It's like, hey, check out this cool song. All right, no, keep your hands raised. If you raised your hand before, keep it raised. Okay, now look around you. And the reason I'm doing this is because we are not the only ones who can chameleon effect. We're not the only ones who change our behaviors. We're not the only ones who can stand by sometimes, right? All right, you guys can put your hands down. I thought I would add a little comfort for you, but understanding this concept helps us tonight with our scripture. And so if you're taking notes, you can write down the title of my message tonight is Camouflage or High Alert. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, chameleons. That was really loud. We're going to be reading through Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 through 10. So if you have your Bibles, you can just go to the center, go all the way to the right, or most of the way to the right. It'll be right there before Ephesians, I believe. You also have your quarter sheet that you got from your small groups. If you don't, turn to a leader and ask them. It's super great for taking notes. If you guys want to go onto the Bible app or use your phone to take notes, that's totally cool. Please just scroll up or scroll down and click the airplane. You don't need to be on social media right now, I promise. So, Galatians chapter 1, 6 through 10. Raise your hand if you're there. If you don't want to go to there, you guys can read it behind me. It's going to be on the screen. It says, I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Not that there is another one, but there are some who trouble you and who want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we, talking about apostles, capital A apostle, or an angel from heaven, come to you and should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one that we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anybody is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one that you received, let him be accursed. For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? For if I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. Yikes. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for the freedom that you offer us, and thank you so much for the love that you give us, and thank you so much that we don't have to work for our salvation. God, I ask that you would just open up the hearts of those who are here tonight to receive this message, and that we would be able to learn from it and move forward as better Christians. Amen. So, at this point in the story arc of the gospel and the spreading of Christianity, Paul has been walking around all over what we know as the Middle East or Europe, or if you are in geology or this far, you will know it as the country of Turkey. And Paul is basically going around, he's telling everybody about who Jesus is and what he's done for them. And you could think of him as Pascal running around going, Jesus, 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 but way more eloquently, I promise. Anyway, so there's these people who disagreed with Paul, and after Paul left the churches of Galatia, they went behind him and they began preaching something different. And these visitors, they were not invited, I promise, these visitors were Jewish people, and they came in telling people that in order to be God's people, to be seen and identified as God's children, that they had to do something different, that they had to follow a different gospel. So let's switch perspectives. So before we start hating on these Jewish people, because it can be kind of easy sometimes as Christians to go, that's not what we believe. But before we start hating on them, let's look at what they would be going through. For thousands of years, for generations upon generations, there have been these people who have been hated because of their faith and their loyalty to God, and they've been sacrificing a lot to be identified as God's people. These Jews were required to be circumcised 8 days after they were born, which is still a baby. They feel pain. They weren't allowed to associate with unclean things such as prostitutes, food that was cooked or prepared wrong, and they weren't allowed to use or have money that was offered to different gods. And this one, bacon. Guys, they couldn't have bacon. Or sausage.
Okay.
Or pork, or any other foods that were just like not kosher. All right? So from there, that's just what they believed. So from their bacon-deprived perspectives, I'm pretty sure that it probably looked a lot like what we experience in families sometimes. So raise your hand if you have a sibling. Keep your hand raised if they're still in this room. Bless your souls. So for instance, you guys can put your hands down. I have 8 siblings. Yeah. One of them I haven't met, but I have 8 siblings. And so growing up, you had to kind of like elbow your way in to get food that was still hot, or if there was any left. And we went through about a half a gallon, maybe a gallon of milk per day. To the point where my dad actually bought a dairy cow, but that's besides the point. So, siblings, back to my point. Let's say that you have family coming over. Let's say that it's actually like Thanksgiving or Christmas, right? And it's the week before, and your mom leaves a note on the refrigerator as she's on her way to work, and she says, I want the kitchen, the living room, your bedrooms, the bathroom, I want it all cleaned up, swept, mopped, put away, things dried, put away, folded, put away, everything. I want the house looking tip-top shape today. Have you guys ever experienced this? Like, do all the chores today, clean the whole house today. You're like, Cinderella, oh my gosh, it's Thanksgiving break. I just want to like play video games and read my book. Same? Yeah. So you get you guys wake up and you're like divvying out your chores, and you're like, all right, Jimmy, you're gonna clean the bathroom, and all right, Timmy, you're gonna put away all the dishes, and all right, Cassandra, I don't know where these names are coming from, but all right, Cassandra, you're gonna sweep and mop, and so you guys get all these chores divvied up, and about halfway through the day, you look over and you see your 2 brothers playing Madden. And then you look into your sister's room, and she's on her phone texting her boyfriend for the 3rd time, or on the phone with him. And the rest of your siblings are God knows where, and you've done your portion of the work, and so you're like, I'm gonna go ride my horse. I'm gonna go do my thing. I'm gonna go read a book, whatever it is. And then about halfway through the day, or it gets closer to the evening when your mom would be home, and you decide, we should probably get some stuff done. And you try to motivate your siblings, and you try to get people to do things the right way, and they're not listening. And so your mom comes home, and she goes, hey, all the stuff's done. Good job, everybody. And you're like, it was me. I did all the work. I obeyed the rules. Or maybe you're like, nah, dude, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. Every time this happens, it's me cleaning all the time. So you decide, I'm just going to do my part, and I'm going to let all these people do their thing. And then your mom comes home and says, what's wrong with you? How come it's not done? And you get in trouble as well, and you're like, but I did my part. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So it's probably a little bit what these Jews are thinking, like, man, I have been following these rules, and I've been doing my part, and then all of a sudden, these people get to come in and say, like, I believe in Jesus, and they're forgiven, and they're loved, and they're, like, welcomed into the kingdom of heaven. Like, nah, dude, you got to follow the rules. And so basically, they're telling them, these Jews are telling these new people in Galatia, these non-Christian Jews, or these non-Christian Gentiles, that they need to follow all of these rules that I mentioned before. No bacon. You have to observe Sabbath a certain way. You can't hang out with people who are prostitutes. You can't hang out with people who are tax collectors, right? Let's see if I can do this without making noise.
ASMR.
It was still loud, huh? Yeah. All right, so these guys fully believed that Paul was wrong, okay? Straight up, they just thought that he was wrong. And so they went behind him to these churches of Galatia, and they're teaching these Christians these things that was opposite of the gospel, that they had to uphold all of these laws and these mandates, but what they were teaching them was not the gospel. And we see this in verses 6 through 7. So if you're taking notes on your quarter sheet or on your phone, go ahead and write this down. There is no other gospel. There is no other good news. The gospel that Paul had been teaching them was not something that he and his friends cooked up in their bedroom so that way they can have all of these followers and believers. It was not some Old Testament, New Testament, rub your belly, pat your head thing. This was good news, which is what the gospel translates to. This is good news. And it wasn't good news from people with a title, with a capital A, apostle. This was good news from God. This was the life message that Christ lived and taught, right? So in verses 8 through 9, we see this important part that even if Paul or another apostle or even an angel were to come to them and to preach something that was different than what they had shared before and claim it as the gospel, it was not. Let them be accursed. So here's my question. Why would anybody preach something opposite of the gospel of Jesus? Why? I mean, we have hundreds of religions these days that I can't even follow. Like, I can't keep up with it. You have people who are calling and asking you to be, or who are asking you to follow their religions, such as Muslim, or Jehovah's Witness, or Jewish, or Catholicism. Or sometimes even no religion. Sometimes we are tempted to maybe water down the gospel, maybe not come on as strong because we don't want to cause a ripple in our friendships. We don't want to put tension or strain on a friendship. We want to be accepted. So as Christians, we are to hold each other responsible and accountable, though. In 1 Corinthians 5, verse 12, you don't have to turn there, just follow along on the screen. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church for whom you are to judge? Now, take note here, guys, that when the writer says judge, he's not talking about putting somebody down or making them feel bad for when they mess up or saying, hey, Carter, do better. When he says judging those inside the church, he's saying, hey, you have agreed to be a Christian and you have held yourself to this standard, saying like, hey, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to hold you accountable. For instance, let's say that you start off in September or August and you say, I'm going to get straight A's this year because my mom said that she's going to give me $50, or because, you just want to get good grades and do good and learn things. But let's say that you're like, I'm going to get straight A's. And about 3 weeks, maybe 6 weeks into the semester, you are hanging out with your friends, and you're playing video games, and you are doing anything but doing your homework, and you have a test the next day. Let's just set the scene for a little bit. And your friend comes alongside you who has the same classes and says, hey, dude, what are you doing? Thought you were going to get straight A's this year. Thought you were going to try to do better. Thought you were going to try to challenge yourself to have straight A's and to learn these things. It was like holding up a mirror for these non-Christians, these non-Christian Gentiles, these non-Jewish Gentiles, that's what I'm trying to say. These people in Galatia, Paul's holding up a mirror to them saying like, yo, dude, take a look at what you're doing. Which is why Paul is teaching them and calling them out, because he wants to hold them accountable. Because see, as soon as Paul had left the churches of Galatia to move on and to spread the gospel and to spread it to people who have never heard this and to give hope to a generation and to a people who have been living in sin and who have been living without hope and who have been hurting, these Jews came in and they said, hey, that wasn't all of it. And because I'm a Jew and because I've been following God longer, I know that Paul left some stuff out. It's not true. So you got to do all of these things, and here's a long list of rules that you got to do. And these people in Galatia, they camouflaged, they adapted themselves back to what the Jews were saying, back to these leaders of this Old Testament, this Old Covenant. And by doing that, they bound themselves back to saying, I'm going to do my best to obey all of these rules. I'm going to do my best to do right and rely on my will and rely on my strength instead of Jesus. In verse 10 we see, and this is my main idea, so write this down as well, guys. We are not seeking the acceptance of our friends, but from God. So your likes on Facebook, your Instagram, how many replays and screenshots and whatever, and how many friends on Snapchat do I have, how many views from TikTok, how many people have liked this, how many people are accepting and approving the messages that I send on social media. That is not what we are seeking. If you follow Christ, you are seeking for something more. So there's this thing that goes around, this sentence that we see. This sentence that only God can judge me. You guys probably see it on the back of somebody's sweatshirt, or tattooed across their chest, or on a big black Subaru that's bumping some really bad bass. And while God is the ultimate judge, if you are a Christian, you are going to be held accountable to a higher standard, to represent the true gospel, the only gospel, and who it is that we believe in. When someone comes alongside you who is a Christian and they say, hey, let's talk. They pull you aside and they say, hey, so I noticed that you had this search history on your phone, and I noticed you were watching something that was really not what we believe in. And I noticed that you were maybe going against what you said that you would follow. And I just want to challenge you a little bit and say, hey, man, I believe in you, and I want to come alongside you, and I want to help you get back on track. I want to help you get closer to God again. I want to help you in your faith. You need to be gracious and accept that, because that is love, right? So be patient in line at store, because being in a hurry is not going to make the line go by faster. Be loving to everyone that you meet, even when they don't shower. Be kind and gentle to your family when it's really hard, especially when it's really hard to be kind and gentle to your family. I get it, 8 siblings, I told you. And maybe have a little bit of self-control, right, with your social media, or when you're grabbing cookies and they say, hey, grab one, and you grab 2 because they stuck together. We know. But we do this not to be accepted. We're not obeying these things. We're not doing this to be accepted by people on social media. We're not doing this to be accepted by the people around us, or even our leaders, or our parents, or our siblings, or our people on social media. We do this because it is representative of God and of what we believe. And it's honoring to Him. Because if and when we follow Christ, the fruits of our spirit will show. The fruits of our lives will show. Is it going to be fruit of your flesh or fruit of your spirit? So let's be sure that when we are out in the world and we are around our friends, that we're representing what we believe and what we believe to be true, and we represent Christ well. By being kind and joyful and gentle and patient and loving and good. So that's it. We're going to move into our small groups. Our small groups are a time where we get to discuss with people our age who understand, like, yo, dude, finals week? Nah, Fortnite's out. Nah, dude, the new version of this new movie is coming out. This new thing's coming up. Dude, I'm just so stressed right now. I don't want to study. What? No, I'm going to eat chocolate in my bed and eat Doritos in my bed and watch 6 episodes of Criminal Minds. I'm calling myself out right now. But these people, you guys, look around. Those people who had their hands raised, it's not just you. We all try to blend in. We all want to be accepted, but we're not seeking acceptance from our friends. We're seeking acceptance from God. And so these people around you, I encourage you when you go into your huddles and then into your small groups to just lean in, to talk about these things. Because they understand and we get it. And when we are with people who are Christians and we're along with people who understand, we can trust them and we can have them as accountability partners and be like, yo, Hallie, I need you to text me at about 11 p.m. every night and ask me, yo, are you sleeping or are you watching Netflix? Because I have an issue.
I'll be up watching Netflix.
You should be watching Netflix with me. Okay? So the people who are in your small groups, these are people that you can talk about this with, okay? So as we go into our age and gender appropriate groups, please go to your huddles first. Hang on, wait, I'm not done. I want to say this because sometimes it gets a little confused. So our huddles first, And then from there, your leaders will put you into smaller groups where you can have these better discussions, okay? So we're gonna go over these small group questions. Number 1, what causes you to believe something is true or not true? What convinces you? And then number 2, talk about a time that you went against your beliefs to go with the flow. And how have you resisted and held to your beliefs? Number 3, in what ways do you find yourself seeking approval from your friends more than you seek approval from God? And number 4, we're going to pray for each other because prayer is amazing and it works way more than any financial or group or whatever. So pray. All right? You guys can go into your groups now. Thank you.